If there's 3 things I could pull from the past, aged between 18 and 23, that I imagine most men hate, it's car insurance premiums. I don't know where they think an 18-year-old driving a 1995 Nissan Micra is going to pull $3,500 from. Whatever a strict NAT type is on a router, only gamers will truly understand the pain of that. And nightclub bouncers. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate all nightclub bouncers. I know they have a tough enough job, and for the most part they can be rather nice and even reasonable, though I could be mixing them up with lads outside the club that are just too big to get in the door. But I also know that there isn't a man out there right now that frequents the pub or club that hasn't had a negative run-in with them at least once in their life. And to say some of them may possess a superiority complex on top of a general favouritism towards the ladies would really surprise nobody out there who has the ability to make a clapping noise when thrusting their hips in and out while in the nip. And don't pretend like I'm the only one that does that. How else are you supposed to tell your missus you're ready to bonk? So far in my life, I've had 3 notable bad run-ins with bouncers. My first bad run-in with a bouncer happened to me exactly 1 week after I had turned 18, which is the legal drinking age here in Ireland and most countries in the world because it makes sense. Yeah, I'm throwing shade at America here, but I'm sure even Americans will back me up here when I say wait until you're 21 to drink is a bit ridiculous. Like, you can join the army over there when you're 17, which has gotta lead to some Monty Python level conversations. Hey, get a load of this guy. His first week as a marksman, and him and that M24 have popped more heads than a teen with acne. You need to keep an eye on it. Wait. Is that mouthwash alcohol based? Get him, boys. So I was queuing to get into a nightclub as I was to meet my mates inside. As I said, I had just turned 18, so I hadn't actually got any photo ID on me at the time because I was still waiting on my age card to be sent out to me. An age card is a photo ID you can apply for when you turn 18. But I wasn't too worried because I had actually been going to this club for about a year already, and I was never once asked for ID. And any worries I might have had were quickly put to bed when he let a girl in ahead of me that I just so happened to know, who was both a mate of my sister and was only 15. I say this rather offhandedly, but in reality some poor bastard in the club that night is probably doing time right now because of that bouncer.
Stan said she was 18.
So I approached the bouncer with all the confidence of a fat girl in a small town, gave him a nod and went to walk past, only for him to put out his hand and stop me. I turned thinking maybe they just decided to start charging people in tonight or something like that, only for him to look at me and say,
ID.
Well, this isn't really ideal, but perhaps I can still rescue this yet. So I was like, no, not on me, but I am 18. I know that's what somebody under 18 would say, but I genuinely am 18.
Well then, you're not coming in, are you?
Now, I don't know whether it was the f*** you tone he used or my short temper for people with an attitude problem, but needless to say, things devolved rapidly from there. Are you actually serious?
If you don't have ID, you're not coming in. I'm not going to say it again. So move on, or we're going to have a problem here.
I already have a problem here. You're turning me away for not having ID, even though I just saw you not 10 seconds before me not take a second glance at f***ing Dora the Explorer that you just let walk through. It was at this point I was gently escorted away by 2 more security lads. Yeah, I probably could have handled it a little bit better, but it was the only club in the town, so it pretty much ended my night. And the fact that I'd been going to this club for a year without being asked for ID, and the only time I was ever turned away was after I was actually legally allowed to drink in there. Yeah, it was a bit irritating. My second run-in with bouncers happened a few years later when I was in college. Myself and PJ were both going out that night, but we were both going to different places to meet up with different groups. I was especially keen about this night because I hadn't dipped my wick in a few months and I was starting to get a bit panicked. Oh god. What if I never get fanny again? But there was a strong possibility I was going to remedy this tonight because one of the girls in the group I was heading to meet up with seemed especially interested in me. So the plan was me and PJ would have a few pre-drinks together to get the ball rolling and save the few dollars, and then we'd part ways when we leave the flat. So we did just that. We had exactly 3 drinks each, remember that, left the flat at no later than 10 PM and parted ways. The place where I was meeting up with everybody was a late bar that was about 5 minutes walk from where we lived. So I got there pretty quickly. I walked towards the door, giving the bouncer the usual casual greeting. How are you? Before he stepped directly in front of me with his hand on my chest and said,
Not tonight, lad.
I was a bit taken back by this and I said to him, Not tonight? What do you mean not tonight? To which he said,
You're not coming in here tonight. You're too drunk.
Yeah, he genuinely refused to let me in because I, Ducky, an Irishman with 3 cans of cider in him, was too drunk to get into a late bar at 10 PM. And he knew this because he's seen through my clever facade of walking, talking and behaving stone cold sober. I tried explaining to him that I'm only after coming out and I only had 3 drinks, but for some crazy reason, highlighting how much more of an intellectual I was than him using the powers of logic, reason and common sense didn't seem to be working with this man to get me inside. I don't know what the world is coming to. Like when you can't even reason with a bouncer? Who can you reason with? Am I right? I knew he didn't actually think I was too drunk. The real reason and the mistake I made when approaching the door was I wasn't a woman and I didn't have one with me. Bouncers and doormen do this shit all the time. If there's too many men inside, they start turning away blokes at the door and only leaving women to keep a good balance. Of course, they can't outright tell you that's what they're doing, or they'd be rightfully brought to court by many a justified man trying to enjoy a night out. So they'll give you some bullshit reason and send you on your way, which is kind of rubbing salt in the wound. That's like finding a man dying of thirst and feeding him sand. Like, you go to the pub to meet women because that's the most ideal place to meet them, but you can't get in to meet a woman unless you already have one with you. But why would you have one with you if that's the reason why you've come here? So you can't get in, completely ruining your night, which you did to mine. I could have just met back up with PG in another pub, but I was way too annoyed with the whole night and I would have just spent the whole night just stewing on it, so I just went home. And the girl I had potential with, well, she got off with somebody else that night and they started going out not long after. And it was roughly around that time where I recorded my longest dry patch I've ever had to deal with as a single man. Fantastic. And on to my third run-in with bouncers. I was with Hef and PJ in the smoking area of a nightclub we had all just arrived at. It was a different club to the first and second. Now, it was relatively early in the night and there wasn't many people in there yet. So we were just hanging out in the smoking area on our own, still relatively sober, enjoying our first drink in there. Now, while we were talking, I got a tip on my shoulder, only to turn around and find I was surrounded by 2 bouncers and the club owner, who doubled as a bouncer as well, so 3 bouncers. Obviously quite confused, I asked, "Is everything okay, lads?" To which the owner replied, "Would you mind coming with us?" Still quite confused, but seeing as I hadn't done anything wrong, I said, "Yeah, no worries." Put my drink down and followed them. They led me out into the front entrance of the club, handed me back the €10 I had just given them to get in not 10 minutes before, and told me I wasn't coming back in. I just looked at them. I was like, what? But the 3 of them just stood there staring at me, leaving a really long silence, until eventually I said, "Are you at least going to tell me why you've just kicked me out of here?"
You know what you did. Now go on away.
Then the owner and one of the bouncers turned around and went back inside. I tried pulling more information out of the bouncer at the door, but he just told me, in the simplest terms, to f*** off and talk to the owner in the morning. So I rang the boys, they came out, I filled them in, and they didn't seem to have a clue on what was going on either. So we just moved on to another spot for the night and enjoyed the rest of our night. The next morning, I still couldn't let it go, so I got up and sauntered back down to the nightclub that was also a hotel, so it was open during the day, and finally confronted the owner. "Why did you have me kicked out last night? I was doing f*** all other than chatting quietly with my mates before you 3 surrounded me like I was f***ing Bruce Lee or something."
Because you were spraying people with drink.
Spraying people with drink? Okay, 2 things. Number 1, I sprayed nobody down with drinks. I was in there for all of 5 minutes and I had 1 drink. That was the very drink I put down when you came over to me. And 2, what f***ing people? There was only 3 of us in the smoking area. 2 of them were my mates and 1 of them was me. We argued over and back for a while, him adamant that I was in the club hosing people down with drink, and me certain he was mixing me up with a Grand Prix podium because I'd blow hef before I'd waste drink. But ultimately we got nowhere and I just never bothered going back to the club in the end. It closed down a few months later anyway, so f*** 'em. Not really surprising anyway. They probably had no customers left given you didn't actually have to do anything to get kicked out.
And don't come back here again.
What did he do?
He drank his drink too fast and it dribbled down onto his chin and then he got a bit in his shirt.
Oh, dirty bastard. To this day, I still don't know what they think they saw. The best explanation I can think of is the way I hold a bottle in a pub, with me thumb over top of it to help keep the fizz in and prevent anybody tipping their fag into it to be funny. Maybe that's what they misconstrued, but there's a world of difference between holding your thumb on top of a drink and performing an alcohol-based money shot on non-existent people. As I said though, they're not all bad. I've had plenty of good interactions with bouncers in the past. I usually get along with them quite well and I'm nothing but polite to them because I know their job isn't easy. They gotta deal with us pissheads for the whole night, so I don't envy them that. But you can't say that job doesn't attract the kind of asshole people who would happily ruin entire nights for you just because of some inflated ego or abuse of power. It does. I'd say at least 1 in 5 bouncers are that type, so you come across them more often than you'd think, especially if you're a guy. And given that the majority of my audience is male due to the complete lack of tit pics I'm sent, why not tell me in the comments your worst bouncer or security encounter and I'll pin the most interesting one. Thanks for watching and I will catch you lads and ladies in the next one.